Ubisoft is a company that likes patterns. Once they think they have created a formula that works, they implement it in all the titles they have in production. Most of the time, this is a bad deal for customers, as most of these involve imposing exceedingly restrictive DRMs to soothe Ubisoft's paranoia about piracy. Case in point, the first pattern Ubisoft was observed to engage in was requiring a persistent connection to their servers for all the games they were making at one point. We have covered this in detail in our video on Always Online DRM, so if you haven't watched that yet, be sure to watch it after you finish this one. For now, here's a quick summary. In 2010, Ubisoft became the first publisher to, as a rule, require a persistent connection to their servers for single-player games. Starting with Silent Hunter V, Battle of the Atlantic, and Assassin's Creed II, both of these titles were rendered temporarily unplayable by the inadequacy of Ubisoft servers, an issue that would also plague the launch of their next game, Settlers 7. Unmoved by the plight of their consumers, Ubisoft continued imposing Always Online DRM for single-player campaigns all the way through 2011. Here is a list of affected games and the length of time each title enjoyed uncracked. Ubisoft's Always Online games evaded piracy for an average of 109.2 days. This fact was not lost on Ubisoft, who stated in a conversation with PC Gamer, a clear reduction in piracy of our titles which required a persistent online connection, and from that point of view, the requirement is a success. Nevertheless, consumer resentment towards the inconvenience caused by the Always Online DRM eventually forced Ubisoft to declare in 2012 that they would no longer require a persistent connection to their servers, and would instead require a one-time authentication during game installation, following which single-player could be played offline. However, it would appear Ubisoft has not given up on Always Online DRM completely, as they have occasionally returned to requiring a persistent connection with titles like For Honor, The Crew and its sequel, and most recently, Beyond Good and Evil 2. Even for games that are spared Always Online requirements, Ubisoft still manages to irritate customers with other DRMs that can be argued to be just as abrasive. In March 2016, Ubisoft began using de novo with the release of Far Cry Primal, which did delay its crack by 313 days. Ubisoft must have thought this was worth the €100,000 de novo charges AAA companies, since Ubisoft has continued using it on almost every title of theirs since. In recent times, however, it would appear Ubisoft has grown dissatisfied with de novo alone, as they decided to pair it with VM Protect in Assassin's Creed Origins and all their games that followed. De novo was already found to hamper performance with its anti-tamper triggers and bloated code. Add to that VM Protect's virtualization. There's little surprise Assassin's Creed Origins hammered players' computers to the point of choking the once popular quad-core i5s. Voxy, a hacker who had cracked several de novo titles, estimated the DRMs to tank the game's performance by 30 to 40%. Of course, Ubisoft does not care, seeing as they continued using the two DRMs in Far Cry 5 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It appears VM Protect and de novo will be standard features in all Ubisoft titles for the foreseeable future. All that aside, DRM is not the only area where Ubisoft likes to form habits. Their rocky relationship with PC players is soured further by their occasional dabbling in downgrades. Why do they do this? This is what an insider had to say to What If Gaming about The Division. We really loved the reception to the demo we showed of the PC version at E3. Currently, as it stands, there is definitely a lot of push coming from publishers to not make the experience so different on consoles, as to alienate people into thinking that next generation is not as powerful as PC. The insider leaked this report of a downgrade in progress after the game's trailer was shown at E3 2014. How did he know? He was working within the graphics technical division at Swedish studio Ubisoft Massive, the developer of The Division. History proved him right, as the downgrade was confirmed on record in a 2016 Q&A session prior to the game's release.
As a game dev, do you guys ever get restricted based on consoles, as far as what you can do? Just because it's we know we can do this on a PC, but we have to make a game for consoles too?
It is definitely a benefactor in it. But one good thing about The Division is we've always considered the PC as a separate platform. I've worked on projects before that the PC versions are ports from a console, so it carries that limitations over, but we've always been in the mind that we'll have a dedicated PC build, so it hasn't really held it back too much.
That's awesome.
We do have to kind of keep it in check with the consoles. It'd kind of be unfair just to push it so far away from them.
2 years later, VG 24/7 reported there might have been another reason behind the downgrade. On The Division, Xbox had a deal with Ubisoft, and part of that deal was to ensure that the PS4 version did not look better than the Xbox version. The resolution, frame rates, and density of assets could have been higher on the PS4, but this was vetoed to prevent issues with Microsoft. Not only do consoles hamper the PC as a platform, they shackle each other in a race to the bottom. This was not an isolated case. Indeed, this is not even the first instance where Ubisoft has done this, as a similar controversy surrounded Assassin's Creed Unity leading up to its release in 2014. When asked why the game delivered only 30 frames per second at 900p for both the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, this is what senior producer told Videogamer.com. We decided to lock them at the same specs to avoid all the debates and stuff. The senior producer quickly retracted his statement. I simply chose the wrong words when talking about the game's resolution, and for that, I'm sorry. This was reported in an article by Ubisoft's senior communications manager, Gary Steinman. It sounds like Steinman gave the producer a lesson in communication. Do not communicate the truth. Steinman went on to say, let's be clear up front. Ubisoft does not constrain its games. We would never do anything to intentionally diminish anything we've produced or developed. Rubbish. He had some gall to say this in 2014, the year that another Ubisoft title, Watch Dogs, had its downgrade reverted by modders who retrieved the original effects from the game's files and managed to enable them in-game with little consequence. If that is not evidence of a downgrade, what is? We won't dwell on downgrades further, as Krobycat has already made a comprehensive comparison that leaves us with little more to say. So moving on to less objectionable territory. Gameplay. Seeing Assassin's Creed grow to be their flagship franchise, Ubisoft tried to replicate that success with other franchises by copying over its gameplay principles. This was not lost on the gaming community, who quickly noted repetitive game design across seemingly separate franchises. Game design like gratuitous parkour, climbing towers to reveal the map, marking enemies to track them through walls and sneaking around them whenever possible, or attacking from stealth for bonus damage. This became something of a running joke, spawning many articles that pointed out these similarities, the most enduring of which has been Ubisoft's love affair with open worlds. Over the years, Ubisoft has tried to spread the open world formula to every setting and every genre they can find. Examples of this include Watch Dogs, The Crew, The Division, Ghost Recon Wildlands, Steep, Watch Dogs 2 and The Crew 2, in addition to the previously mentioned Assassin's Creed and Far Cry franchises. This homogenization did face criticism in its early years, with players complaining of the games feeling familiar, repetitive, and just plain bland. Since then, Ubisoft appears to have taken this feedback to heart as they have delivered games that feel fresh, unique, and above all else, fun. We are talking about games like For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege. Even here, Ubisoft has managed to formulate a template, a business model to be precise. With For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege, Ubisoft has forged a business model that serves as a middle ground between the free, unlocked content updates of Dota 2 and the extortionate shortcut kits and premium passes of EA's Battlefield franchise. The compromise in For Honor and Siege is this: new maps are free for everybody who owns the game. New characters are not free, but can be unlocked via the game's in-game currency that you can accumulate by merely playing the game. However, you can pay to skip the grind by buying season passes and the occasional expansion pack. Is it worth the price though? This is one of the few monetization schemes that are easy to analyze in an objective, mathematical manner. This is possible thanks to the game's progression system. Progressing through the game is simple and straightforward. You complete matches to earn currency, then spend the currency to unlock the characters you want. The time needed to unlock each character is quantified by data from Ubisoft themselves. This enables us to calculate how long it will take you to unlock everything, and the numbers we obtain from this analysis let you decide for yourself how acceptable or excessive the grind is. Let's look at Rainbow Six Siege for an example. As of the latest patch, Wind Bastion, Rainbow Six Siege has a total of 24 DLC characters, which are the only kind of characters you'll need to unlock if you have the standard edition. Each DLC character requires 25,000 renown, the in-game currency, to unlock. Ubisoft estimates will take you 30 hours to accumulate 25,000 renown. Taking 30 hours to unlock each operator translates to taking 720 hours to unlock all 24. If you have bought one or more season passes, your grind will be significantly shorter as all operators in your purchase season are unlocked immediately. Let's measure precisely how much time you'll save with these passes. If you have bought one season pass of either the first or second year, you don't need to unlock the 8 operators released in that year. Thus, you reduce the number of operators you need to unlock from 24 to 16. Going by Ubisoft's estimates of 30 hours per operator, unlocking all 16 will take you 480 hours. If you have bought the first 2 season passes, you will have 8 operators left to unlock. Going by Ubisoft's estimates of 30 hours per operator, unlocking all 8 will take you 240 hours. If you have bought all 3 season passes, you don't currently need to unlock any operator unless you have the Starter Edition. If you do have the Starter Edition, you will need to unlock 14 operators from the original roster of Rainbow Six Siege. These operators will cost you 12,500 renown, which Ubisoft estimates will take you 15 hours. At this rate, you will take 210 hours to unlock the entire launch roster. For Honor uses a similar system, which we've looked at in our grind analysis. Be sure to watch that video after you finish this one. While we did calculate the time needed to unlock characters in For Honor, the game uses a different, unquantifiable system to unlock gear for the unlocked characters, which is obviously less than ideal. We hope Ubisoft will standardize the customization system to be more in line with the way characters are unlocked to begin with. Ubisoft has also implemented the same pay-to-skip-the-grind arrangement in Ghost Recon Wildlands with its Year 2 pass, though they haven't provided data on how long it takes to unlock the characters without paying. We are still waiting on their estimates to begin analyzing Wildlands. What makes these systems better than the passes sold by publishers like Activision is the fact that new maps are free, and thus the player base is not divided between those who bought the pass and those who didn't. That being said, Ubisoft's passes are far from perfect. Ideally, they would be monetized solely through cosmetics, meaning new heroes should be immediately unlocked for all players like in Overwatch and Dota 2. However, given Ubisoft's record, this will be too high an expectation and will be setting ourselves up for disappointment. That being said, Ubisoft's current system is not half bad compared to other publishers in its league. What makes Ubisoft's passes better than EA's shortcut kits is that Ubisoft's progression system is straightforward and quantifiable. You get to know how long it will take you to unlock the items you want, and you can decide if the asking price of Ubisoft's passes is worth it. Using the example we just calculated, you get to decide if skipping the 240 hours you'll take to grind 8 operators is worth the $30 Ubisoft charges for Rainbow Six Siege's Season Pass. Battlefield does not offer you this convenience. You cannot calculate how long you'll take to unlock everything in any of the battlefields because their progression systems are a convoluted mess that defies mathematical analysis. What do we mean by this? Look at what it takes to unlock the Desert Eagle in Battlefield 4. Get 20 headshots with a Unica 6. Another handgun that first must be obtained through killing 5 enemies while swimming. How long would this take you? Depends entirely on your situation. If you manage to find another player who'll help you with the assignment, you'll unlock whatever you want in a few minutes. I couldn't find such a partner to help me unlock the Unica 6, so I had to complete the assignment in a normal match. This was an awful experience as I would get shot while swimming by enemies on the ground using automatic weapons. I had no interest in the Unica 6. I just wanted the Desert Eagle and would have preferred to unlock it directly. Sadly, Battlefield does not allow for this. DICE dictates precisely when and how you acquire the weapons you want, and this rigid system completely erases player choice and freedom. A few days after I somehow managed to unlock the Unica 6, I did manage to find a server dedicated to people helping each other with unlocks, and this made unlocking the Desert Eagle a walk in the park. The fact that servers like this exist at all demonstrates how stupid Battlefield's progression is. The inconsistency is rife in Battlefield's progression system as you cannot quantify the unlock requirements for any of the game's guns or attachments. Contrast this with Rainbow Six Siege, which changed its progression to unlock all attachments immediately upon obtaining the character in question. Even while Rainbow Six Siege required you to unlock attachments separately, the process was still the same. Just spend the in-game currency to get the attachment you want. How can you analyze whether Battlefield shortcut kits are worth their price if you cannot calculate the length of time you save by purchasing them? A cynic might say the progression system is deliberately designed to confuse and frustrate players, hoping they'll just give up and fork over the cash. It gets worse as Battlefield 3, 4 and 1 have separate premium passes for unlocking post-launch maps. They want you to pay to buy the game, pay again to access new maps, and pay again to skip the grind. Little wonder EA was voted the worst company in America. Twice. To be fair, EA did away with much of this with Battlefield 5, a move they made sure to tout as a selling point. As we said in our video on DICE, this does not make up for what they did with the previous Battlefields. They should never have imposed such a system in the first place. It would appear EA has no idea on how to make a business model that enables sustainable post-launch development while also not forcing a tedious grindfest on their players, and this does not bode well for their future titles. As Battlefield 5 will not bring in revenue from new maps, we might see post-launch support grind to a halt after they are done with the roadmap they have already promised. You'd be hard-pressed to find a game EA has supported to the extent Ubisoft has with For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege, a title that still has new content in development 3 to 4 years after its release. Interestingly, Rainbow Six Siege was one of Ubisoft's titles to suffer a downgrade before its release, a degradation that has been somewhat rectified in a series of patches that upgraded its textures to display significantly greater detail, a makeover they also bestowed upon For Honor and the crew. With Rainbow Six Siege in particular, Ubisoft introduced new maps that matched or exceeded the visual fidelity seen in the game's pre-release trailers. One of these patches reworked one of the game's worst-looking maps, Hereford Base, turning it into one of its most visually impressive environments. Here's hoping Ubisoft will give the other maps the same facelift. EA would do well to learn from Ubisoft's transparent model. Games are often derived as being platforms for selling DLCs. With For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege, Ubisoft has managed to spin that into a positive. Both of these titles launched in a broken, unfinished state, and could have easily been left for dead by an apathetic publisher. Instead, Ubisoft managed to turn them around with continued support, and their commitment has transformed these two games into enjoyable experiences that no gamer should miss out on. It's likely that these season passes gave Ubisoft the reason and resources they needed to stick around and fix the titles in trouble, instead of abandoning them altogether and starting afresh by moving on to newer projects. That being said, not all of the changes Ubisoft made were improvements. One of the most controversial changes was the addition of a profanity filter in Rainbow Six Siege. The earliest and longest-lived iteration of this would ban players temporarily if they used a word that Ubisoft considered inappropriate. What complicated the issue was Ubisoft never revealed the list of words their filter deemed offensive, and this resulted in confusion when several players reported getting banned for using language they didn't know was offensive. For example, a Spanish player was banned for using the Spanish word for black. A Pakistani player was banned for responding to a teammate asking about his nationality. To make matters worse, trolls have capitalized on this chaos and used this filter to get innocent players banned by tricking them into using words they otherwise never would have used. For example, one player was tricked into asking what a viado was and got instantly banned for it. Apparently, it is Portuguese slang used in Brazil. How does Ubisoft expect English-speaking players to know this? On a similar note, players have also gotten into trouble for talking about Arnold Schwarzenegger and responding to South Park references. What could possibly justify such a stupid system? Ubisoft stated this system was intended to reduce toxicity, but from what we've seen, not only has it failed to curb toxicity, it has also enabled a new form of abuse, manipulating innocent players into getting banned by tricking them into using forbidden words. What makes players particularly vulnerable to such deception is Ubisoft's steadfast refusal to release the list of filtered words. To be fair, Ubisoft has since changed the system to censor the offensive message and warn the player that they have been reported for manual review. How is this better than just giving players a client-side option to hide offensive words in chat messages? All Ubisoft is doing is wasting their manpower and resources by removing buyers for using the wrong words. We are not alone in thinking this filter is unnecessary. The Rainbow Six subreddit is awash with players complaining about the stupidity of the system. Ubisoft will be wise to heed this torrent of feedback and retract their system before it's too late. Companies that didn't listen to their fans haven't done very well in recent times. These questionable practices aside, Ubisoft's new model represents a rare win-win scenario for both the company and the consumer. It must have been easier and cheaper for Ubisoft to fix the broken games than to build a new title from scratch. Early adopters of For Honor and Rainbow Six Siege finally had a game worth the price they paid for. And this built goodwill for Ubisoft for not giving up on their game and the players who gave it a chance. Players also benefit from a steady stream of new content that prevents the game from feeling stale after a while. Season passes provide Ubisoft with a sustainable source of revenue to keep developing new content for the game. This creates a positive feedback loop that could extend the game's lifespan significantly beyond competing games from other publishers. The wider gaming community benefits as there are 2 more games worth their consideration. Do you agree with our conclusion? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. There is more content like this on the way, so please like, subscribe and press the bell button so you don't miss out.
If you find this subject interesting, please share this video to spread the word.
And while you're here, feel free to watch our playlist on Denuvo's history and performance impact, and our hardware analysis of CPUs and GPUs. Do you play Rainbow Six Siege or Dota 2? Check out the other channel for analytical guides for both games. Link is in the description and on the screen.